all that comes together, and it's outcomes. I mean, a business is there to go create some outcomes. I mean, that's what it exists for. And those outcomes are at the project level, they're at the customer level, they're at the employee level. And so we kind of look at, three things, three by three things that you got to do, three things that are really critical for supporting that. And the numbers that are on this scoreboard, don't get caught up in the numbers. We're not going to dive into specifically what the metrics are. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, there's the QR code. There'll be a link to this and everything, and you can watch a short 15-minute video of me yakking about it. So customer, first one is just some measure of delighted customers. That might be the Net Promoter Score. That might just be repeat business. It might be objectively scored. It might be subjectively scored. But either way, just know that if you are not delighting your customers, that you have a limited business model. Now, delighting your customers does not mean doing it at a low margin. It does not mean taking on excessive risk. It does not mean anything. Your customer has a job that they need built, and you need to build it really, really well. You have to make profit. Profit is not profit's not a four-letter word. It's not a bad word. There is nothing wrong with making profit. It's great to check how you're doing, both your trend over time with profitability, and we're talking net profitability. Making a lot of money on one project or making a lot of money one year is not that big of a deal. Every contractor does that. Making money very consistently and progressively improving your margins as you continue to grow, or holding your margin, that's the magic. So it's important to check those against some industry benchmarks, but don't get caught up in them, and don't get caught up in looking at it year by year. Also remember that there's kind of no such thing as average when you look at those industry benchmarks, whether it's Moss Adams or Clifton Larson or CFMA. When you look at those industry benchmarks, they're taking hundreds or thousands of contractors together. They're putting them all together, and they're lumping them by some basics like size and things like that. But there's, for every person that's average, like I am precisely average in my height, in my shoe size, in my IQ. I'm average in a lot of ways. But there's somebody out there that's 6'6", and there's somebody out there that's 5 foot tall. And the range is really, really wide for contractors as well. So when you look at the average, just kind of know that that's average. What we typically target for, especially some of the financial metrics when it comes to profit, cash, or return on capital, is 2 to 3 times industry benchmarks, just as a target, because there's so much operational opportunity within most contractors. Cash is also king. So you can generate all the profitability you want, but if you are not generating cash, you will, it puts you at heavy risk, especially if you're in a market where there could be potential defaults. It puts you at a horrible negotiating advantage if you're a subcontractor, or even a second tier subcontractor. Heck, even if you're a prime contractor, it puts you in bad negotiating leverage against the project owner. So there's a lot to go into. Delight your customers, make a reasonable profit. You're not trying to just gouge anybody, but make a reasonable profit that lets you keep investing in your business and growing and generate cash. Now, supporting metrics, growth is really critical, and it's not growth as a priority over everything else. It's growth because growth is what allows you to go through there and provide opportunities for other people to continue to grow and build their careers. Growth is what allows other people, and that makes you attractive for people wanting to come to your organization. Growth is what allows you to build more capabilities over time to deliver more projects to growing customers. Your mod rate, however you track safety, but the modification ratio is a lagging measure. So this is not meant to be a prescriptive. This is more of the principles of having a scoreboard for your business, what you look at. But safety is critical. I mean, at the end of the day, there's no amount of profit that's worth somebody having a permanent injury. That's whether it's a back injury. Like I have a back injury that I've been living with since I was like literally 18 years old, and it's not debilitating yet, but it definitely impacts, quality. There's mornings that I wake up in pain on a semi-regular basis. That's not great. So you never want that as you're running a business, and you're never going to be probably. So you're going to beat me for this. I'm going to say, you can probably never prevent 100% of those, but you darn sure should try and do everything you can to do it. Hold your thoughts. I see you judging me.
No judgment. No judgment. I can't help it. I'm right.
And I can't help that I'm right. And then succession countdown is not something, when we look at this, and Sue touched on it, a minute ago, about role transitions. When we're talking about succession countdown, we're not talking about just the ultimate succession, like somebody founded the company, they own all the stock, and there's a financial transaction or something. We do that all the time. That's part of it. What makes the business continue to grow is that general foreman that is in that role, and they're growing, and they are preparing to be a superintendent, and they are training and developing 2 or 3 foremen below them that or maybe 1 or 2 of them will grow into that general foreman position. So when we think about succession, we think about that more generally as succession at all key levels, and that could be from chief estimator through foreman through CEO. So that's how we think about the contractor scoreboard and look at trends over time and how they compare with industry benchmarks. Sue, any comments on that except for the safety comment? I'm kidding.
No, I was just going to go one more step on the succession countdown. If you're a 6+ organization, you're going to have many of those countdowns, right? You're going to have one maybe in each region or area or something like that. You could probably have 7 or 8 in any one place. I'm working with a contractor just the other day. We had a succession planning call, and they've actually taken their org structure, they've blown it up, and they've gone in and basically taken a red Sharpie and circled the boxes on the org structure for people that are leaving. They've either indicated they're leaving, are very possibly, retiring in the next kind of year or 2. And then they took another green Sharpie and circled all of the org structure boxes where everybody is, they're either new in the role and loving it. This is the role they want to have. They've indicated they're around for a while, and again, they're in their proper role. And everybody else was orange after that. And they realized that about half of their org structure was red or orange. So their succession countdown, suddenly they had, 12 of them, and had to figure out now which one's who's going to put what focus where. But yeah, it's not just a singular focus. It really is about looking at those key people, those key positions in the organization. And even if somebody's moving up, right? Again, 6+ company. If we knew the CEO was going, they would name somebody a COO for a number of years. But you had to look, below that to the EVPs, and okay, who's going to be this, and who's going to replace that EVP when we move them up. So it's a cascading picture of filling in everything behind. So it's not just one, it can be many. So
no, that's a great point. And if anybody wants to hear that little joking about the safety, we were talking about that actually in the last time when we met. We were discussing just those differences of between how you think about safety at stage 3, 4, 5, 6 and beyond. And how you think about it, and how much more systematized it becomes, and culturally, what changes, because you can, one thing that I was thinking about is you can hold your mod rate down if you just don't pay any attention to it. It's just going to be whatever it is, but you can hold it down below 1 through I'm going to call it compliance and policing activities. Hard to get it below 0.8 or so. Hard to get it down there consistently without very deliberate cultural changes. That means that I want to see every one of my brothers and sisters that I work with go home safely. I don't want them to to have for me, like my back injury wasn't like some major fault. It was just using a jackhammer, and it was just a stupid momentary lapse of focus after an 18-hour day. I mean, we had hit a utility, so it was just a long day, and that momentary lapse has caused me pain that I live with, forever. So, that's something that is a very deliberate, intentional, change in process and everything over time. So, anyways, if you guys want to listen to that one, feel free to go back to Sue and I, our prior discussion and everything, and you'll hear all about the coronary that she almost had while walking a job site that I thought was reasonably pretty safe.
Oh.
All right. So this moves us to the contractor's business model and kind of helping see the machine. And so I think probably you've made the most valuable. This diagram's been around since the beginning of the organization, and it's had improvements made over the years. And I think when you joined, you made probably the most valuable addition to it, period. So I'd love if you took the whole section and started describing this.
Yeah. So, and it's interesting. We talked a little bit about this, right? When we're going through the leadership focus and talking through the stages of contracting, this is really how you put the whole picture together, right? If you're looking at, you can say it says seeing the machine, right? This is how it looks. So when we look at the big picture, you need a customer, right? There's customers. These are kind of the 6 things that we need, but you need customers, because if somebody's not going to pay for your product, you don't really have a product if they're not going to buy it. Inside that, you need talent, right? Talent has to surround this whole thing. But on the inside, there's the project value stream, literally how we get from, there's an inkling of a project somewhere, to getting it to bid, being a successful bidder, to building it, to exiting the project, right? This is how the money comes in, right? We have a contract and we get paid to execute the whole thing. So that's our project value stream. The next one is you've got to have the supporting operations that go with that, right? There's finance, there's technology, there's equipment, that, all of those things you have to have to be able to build the work. And then our talent value stream, just like the project value stream, right? It goes over and over and over again. The talent value stream, talked about a little bit ago, is we have to be able to plan for the people, to bring them, where are we going to get them, bring them on board, train, develop, retain, have succession planning. And then how do we offboard them on the other end, or even offboard them to a different position? How do we do that? And how do we keep doing that cycle over and over and over again? All of that is wound up into a strategy, right? Where are we going to do these projects? What type of projects are we going to do? And it is, you can see strategy is, again, a cycle that goes around and around and around. It's interesting to me that when we look at this, this is most people can get their head around this. It gets very fun when we start to look at the pieces that go into the project value stream, the pieces that go into the supporting operations, and the pieces that go into talent value stream, and kind of how they start to fit together when we look at them in the stages of contractor growth.
Right.
Yeah. And David, I love this quote that you have: all models are wrong, but hey, some are useful. Not all of them are going to fit every single time, right? But there's pieces that make sense to others. So
I think as a contractor, that all models are wrong. I mean, that starts with the construction documents are a model of a project. The contract is a model of that. So yes, the estimate is a model of that, of the specs and all of the plan sheets and everything. And then you start building and you make adjustments. So as we're going through here, think about it in those terms. This is just a simple plan sheet level view of what a contracting business would look like. It's meant to be more generalized. I mean, one of the things that email us, contact us, and we'll send you a soft copy of this so that you can go through there and make it match your own business, because your own supporting operations and maybe the parts of your project value stream or your talent value stream, maybe they look a little bit different, but maybe they don't. Maybe this helps you. So this is more generalized. So I'm excited to get into this. So we're going to go through each of the stages of growth, some of the same things we did. So keep in mind what we just talked about with the leadership focus at each stage of growth and some of the sizes and some of the challenges. And now let's unpack and build this model.
Yeah, so we start here, right? And you can see on the right-hand side, kind of at the bottom, right? We've got the get work, we've got the do work. We're back into that starting up mode. We need to find a customer who wants to pay us to build their work. Nobody that I know of got into construction because they wanted to run a construction business. They all got into construction because they wanted to build work, right? They wanted to
Right.
go out and actually build work. So really in the very beginning of starting up, this is kind of what that relationship looks like. If you think back to that first slide that we were showing here, for the stage one, it had the two people off to the side shaking hands. That's really where we are here. It is, we got a customer, we have a product we can build for them, and that's really it. That's the exchange. That's what goes back and forth. So this is
I
our
wish
first
we could
stage.
go back here. I I personally miss. I came up through the field, so I miss building every single day. I mean, this is the if you don't love building, you probably shouldn't be a contractor. So
Well, yeah, and it's funny, we uh our kids have a house in Colorado, so we were helping them to build out the basement, right? Because it was just concrete walls, that was it, it's all that was there. So we were helping them to do that, and we got a contractor, kind of a one-man show, right? Had probably 3 people that worked for him, so he was definitely a startup. Been around a long time, but he loves this. He loves doing this. Funny thing is, it was like pulling teeth to actually get a change order from him, right? We talk on the phone all the time, and he's like, "Hey, so I'm gonna have to do this, gonna have to do this," and yeah, and of course, we were changing a few things, so it was gonna change the price, and he needs a progress payment. He was good at getting a progress estimate out because he needed cash. But looking at, contracts and changes and documentation and things like that, maybe not quite so much. So we had to do a little coaxing there and say, okay, well, no payment until you get us the rest of these documents. But he was in it for the love of the build,
yeah,
literally the love of the build, and you can tell, beautifully done, beautiful project. But that's what he loved to do, is to build.
right.
Yeah.
Great foreshadowing and a great personal example for stage two.
Yeah, so stage 2, now you get into, right? So the guy we were working with, it was him and, three other people. Then you start getting into stage 2, where now again, you have 2 or 3 jobs going on,
Right.
and they're not in the same person's basement, right? They might be across town, they might be in different counties. So here, you're still in it for the love of the build. So you still have the project execution and the customer, right? Because that's always going to be that startup. You got to have cash. You've got to have somebody paying for your product. But now you're going and you've got to hire some people. So you've got to get into the talent side of things. You've got to figure out, can you hire one? Do you need to hire 2 or 3? What is it you need to do? Then you start getting into, it's not just, hey, can you wire the money to my bank account? Now you've got multiple people on possibly multiple jobs that are most likely needing to buy things that are not just the tools that are sitting in the back of your pickup, right? So finance, you're doing something with finance. You may have had to go and get a line of credit. You may be trying to get some terms from your local hardware store, but somehow you've got finance that you're dealing with. You're probably also dabbling in the technology, right? How am I keeping track of my receipts? Am I taking pictures of these things? Is there some software that we're using? Are we now on QuickBooks, which is typical of what most people do? And we're having to buy more things than just buying it and introducing it into the job and then not having really much left over. Now you're looking at, okay, I've got again a couple of jobs going on. Can I buy together what might be needed on both of these? But you've got a lot more happening in more areas than just here's my one job and we're off. So the basic foundation starts to split out a little bit.
I love the way that you described finance, almost the nuance between finance, between really describing the model, but the difference between finance and accounting. Finance being, some of the activities like you talked about, the banking, the getting a line of credit, getting, getting insurance and things like that, and accounting being keeping score.
Yep.
So, okay, so now we're moving past two. The diagram starts to get a little bit messier.
Well, it gets messier because you've gone from probably 15 people to that 50 people.
Right.
So now you can see at the bottom, geography is a thing. Now that geography might be you've got some estimators now in the office, and you've got 2 or 3 jobs or 10 jobs going on, and those jobs are going on across town. But geography can be a thing, right? Where are all of my people and where is all of my work? And I probably have an office besides my garage. So you've got people kind of strewn about and have to know where they are and what they're doing. Still back to the project execution and the customer, but you can see now we've added that customer base needs to be a diversified base, right? You're probably not building for the same people over and over, or maybe you are, but then are they delighted and they're going to invite you back? Because if it's a larger customer and they're not happy with what you're doing, you may have just lost that, right? So this is a little bit like the stock market, right? You need to be diversified in who you're doing work for and making sure that they're happy with the work that you're doing. The other things that change, and you can say, well, I should say the things that stay the same, right? We still build on talent. We still have finance, technology, and procurement, a little bit of that. But what's happening now is our project execution. We're kind of going two ways with that. One is we're more concerned with project exit because we're not always staying. Not everybody is staying on that project to finish it to move to the next one. You may be dialing down your crews, taking them to another job. Now, how are you going to exit out of this? How are you going to get everything from, cleaning up any of your submittals or getting the last of your cash? Or in some cases, are there O&M manuals that are owed? What do you got to do to get out, to be done, right? To close the book on that, or close the book on that chapter of this particular job. You're also looking out a little further before that, is when you're awarded this job, how are we planning this? How are we getting ready from the time we get ink on a contract to day one? Because you probably have 2 or 3 or 4 jobs or half a dozen jobs running around in other places. You have to plan for the work that's being done, how we're getting out of that work, and then how those people are going to come around, how we're going to cash flow this thing, right? How we're going to be able to work through the planning stage to execution to exit, so that we don't have people standing around, that we have enough cash to make payroll, right? Like David said, if you're an hour late on payroll, you'll see who your friends are. But it is about looking at that repeatable cycle of how do we plan this work, how do we work through it, and then how do we get out of it, making sure we have that next job to go to, so that we don't have people sitting around. So it starts to get a little messy, because we're looking at that kind of consistency and outcome. So we're looking at it in loops, right? Not just a start and an end, but in loops.
So this is the one thing that I think goes back to also your background, but going back to you as a contractor and how you work with subcontractors.
Mm.
And it's interesting how when you get to a certain size or certain stage of growth, you learn how to go pull things out of your subcontractors. And giving an example of that, in for the most part, if you're at stage three and you're working for, let's say you're a specialty contractor and you're working for a general contractor, or you're a general contractor working for a project owner, that's at a similar stage, right? You're kind of evenly matched. They aren't going to be focused on what you're doing from award to start. They just want you on the project and go build that project and get that project done. And they aren't focused on all the stuff that you need to be doing to exit the project. So it's just kind of this whole morass of problems, right? Now you're at the end of the project and you all of a sudden realize, like, oh, I'm running out of cash, and you go and look and you're like, oh, why we haven't gotten paid our retention on this? We didn't get paid our
Yeah.
final billing. And then you call them up and they're going, okay, let me get back to you. And a week later, they say, well, you need to get these closeout documents and this and this and this. And you start arguing and arguing, and then you go check the contract and the specs, and then you realize you had to do it. And now, 90 days later, you start to get your money.
Yep.
That creates a problem. What I've noticed that's interesting, I noticed when, just as a contractor, we got, when we first started getting some projects with like those customers that we kind of wanted to, that next level up, boy, they were asking like a lot of questions. Their project managers were very deliberate and asking us questions about things that were kind of in the startup stage, about
Yep.
submittals, and do you have this, and have you ordered this, and have you done all these things, right? They were not reactive about it. They weren't reactive on their own. They weren't reactive downstream. And then the same with the project exit documents. They were starting to pull those things through. So proactive as we thought we were as a contractor, we thought we were doing good. The customer, luckily, knock on wood, we had some customers that were pulling us forward. And I know you spent a ton of time doing that. I mean, Kiewit is like a master of that. And I guess you were the regional master of that.
Well, and it was one of those where you really kind of, the rising tide, raises all boats, and you wanted your subcontractors to succeed because the good ones you wanted to work with again, right? And
Right.
the better they could be, then the easier it was to work with them because they understood. Yeah, when we were on the I-405 job, we literally were sending out every single month. It's a matter of, okay, don't forget, in 2.5 years,
Right.
when we're asking you for closeout documents, you need this and you need this. And we even sent out a grid, and it's like, just check the boxes. And if it was already turned in, we'd check the box and send it
Yeah.
to you and say, we already have this. Yes, we have this. Because at the end, project exit is never the time to have to go back and recreate that. Because you're right, the money just sits, and the cash flow will kill you if you're not paying attention, because that's where all the money's going to get held, is at the back end. And then you can't even go back and plan and build that next job because you just don't have the cash to do it.
Right.
So yeah, it's if done well, it is a growing experience for everyone, right? It's same thing with your talent. If you're going to train people and then have professional development and leadership development, you want to do the same thing with the other organizations that you work with, whether vendors or subcontractors. Help pull them through to be better for the industry.
And that's whether that's great advice for, and a lot of general contractors. So don't start to go evolve into that and become proactive, because they're running and
Yeah.
trying to run their business and just keep things moving. So they don't start to evolve to that level until they're typically at, stage 6 plus. If you start to evolve to that earlier, it's a relatively small investment, and it can dramatically improve your outcomes over
Yeah.
time when it comes to your sub base and everything. Because as a general contractor, you are only as good as your base of subcontractors and your ability to
Yep.
pull them all together. The challenge is that investment doesn't start to pay dividends for several years down the road until they become habit. But that's probably the biggest takeaway from this one. So now we're moving past stage three. We're moving to stage four.
And I guess it's appropriate that stage 4 looks a little crazier on this slide, because really you're going from that 150 people to 500 people. It's a big jump to go from getting those consistent outcomes to having that full scalable foundation. So the big things here are when you move from 3 to 4, now you're looking more at, like on the right-hand side, you're looking more at the market sectors. Are you working in the market sectors that you want to be working in? Not just the places, but are you expanding into anything different? Are you contracting out of a market? What does that look like? And just one in from that, what is the planning, right? What is the planning for that? What is the planning for the work? What is the planning for all things that you're going to be doing? When you become, when you're working on that scalable foundation, like we talked earlier, right? It's about projection, it's about succession, it's about all things planning. You can see that the planning actually goes to our talent value stream now really starts to show up. And in here, most of our planning goes to the recruit to hire, right? How many do we need and where are we going to get them? So we worry more about getting the people in the door. We also worry about, you can see up in the contractor's project value stream, right? That now we're backing up not just into, hey, here's our planning, we have ink on a contract and here's when we're going to start. It's not just about the award to start. We're actually backing up and go, okay, so let's look at this. We now have a job to bid. Is this a job that fits in our geography? Is it a new market? Does it fit in our other markets? Does it fit with our project exit strategy, right? Is it filling a niche? Is this really going to overload us? Can we not build it because we don't have the people or the equipment? Is there a big cash flow issue with this job? But it's all the go, no go things here with the opportunity to award. What's going to fit us best? And do we have a good list of questions that we're going to ask ourselves on, is this the right work for us? Again, all kind of wrapping up in that planning kind of situation. You can see that again with finance, tech, and procurement, we're good at that now, right? We're getting stronger and stronger. We probably have a better accounting system. Our technology is backing things up better. We've probably got a decent purchasing program. So we're building some strength there. What we're probably doing, depending on the type of work that you're in, is starting to dabble in, okay, what types of equipment, or do we need to buy more equipment? And again, looking at the opportunity to award, what does that mean for an equipment fleet if you've got that? What does it mean for design of work or fabrication, or do we have a service department? But all of those things are going to be affected as we're looking at the work that we want to bid. So this it's interesting that it really does get back to the projection, the planning, all of that in that kind of stage 4.
It's interesting as I'm looking at this diagram. Your background is civil, obviously, so this story will kind of ring true. So I'm thinking about one of our clients. They had at about we were they're a civil contractor, so I'm trying to get the numbers and the time frame. Yeah, so civil contractor, and I want to say it's 2015. I remember exactly. Yeah, so it was December of 2015 because Raymond was visiting him, one of our other team members. He just happened to be in Sacramento, so he went with me for the day. But we started mapping out the award to start process, and I think at the time they had maybe 100-ish people, so they were in between that stage 3 and 4, so they should be planning for 4, and but they were really coming out of stage 3, and so the award to start, that was pretty tangible, and so it's like everybody knows that there's some demarcation point where we won a project and when we're going to start committing resources to building it, and then there is some date at which we are mobilized to the job site. We're moving the first yard of dirt. we're in some way, we're doing something. And there's all this stuff that has to happen in between. A contract has to get signed, materials have to get purchased, equipment has to get dispatched. We have to figure out the crews. We have to do all these things. And they did a fantastic job of mapping out that process. Now, Raymond's background, came from, a much larger company but he built it from a smaller company to a larger company. And he's an architect. That probably says everything you need to know about him. But he's an architect turned contractor. So he was very heavily on the project development side. So really even backing up prior to opportunity to award. So to him, everything about the project development is just a process. He had multiple people doing that, and it was a process. And so it was interesting for this company kind of 3 to 4, and this is where you can start to see where the stages are. They didn't have much trouble mapping out the award to start. They were able to sit there and put post-its on the board and move them around and draw the lines and connect them, and with reasonable facilitation, they were able to really define the decisions that had to be made. And does it have to be a hard notice to proceed, or can it be a handshake from a really good customer? What's the escalation process? They didn't have much trouble with that. When we got into even a discussion of what you just described of the opportunity to award process, as like, here's some criteria, and this is what we look at, and this is how it ties to our strategy and all those things. It was like, well, there's a lot of variables, and it's just kind of, we kind of make that decision one off, and we just kind of talk about it here and there. Totally good. It was, and because all standards really start with an individual. They start with an individual going, yep, thumbs up, thumbs down. Problem is, it's a bit opaque. And what's interesting is now they're in between stage 4 and 5. They've continued to grow. They're, top line, bottom line, delighted customers, everything on their, contractor scoreboard is growing. And they're now back around, and they have a very clear opportunity to award.
Mhm.
Here's the criteria. And a lot of it was dusting off some of the things from 2015, early 2016. But now they actually have internalized it, and they deeply understand it. And it's now a process more so than a person. And so
Right.
this is just a long way of saying you're right. And they're working on exactly at this stage, developing a lot more recruit to hire capabilities, and going, okay, what exactly
Yep.
do we need? And so it's becoming less reactive. It's not becoming, oh, we won this job, we need X. It's now becoming, looking at our business plan for 2023, we're going to need 2 extra project managers, 1 project engineer, so on and so forth. So it's kind of neat about that. And yeah, it's just neat with the evolution. So now, but there's a lot more moving parts, as you can see. So moving to stage 5 now. So now we're moving from the 150 person range to the 500 person range, and getting really ready to scale.
Yeah, and so clearly, you can see on this slide, we kind of reversed it now. Everything that was already on there stays on there, and we're just circling the new things that are added. Otherwise, David and I tried it the other way, and can't read everything that's on there otherwise. So what we start to find here, right, is that whole ready to scale. Uh, the ready to scale is saying, okay, we got this, right? We've got most of this. We understand what it takes to get to be scalable. And now we see that you kind of have to back up and look at the larger view. So in this case, we look at just like we talked, right? It's all about the communication. It's all about succession. It's all about the systems that we're using to keep things running, and actually making sure that our talent is inside that same kind of system. So just looking at the contractor's project value stream, when we back that up, right? David was just talking about, you were just talking about opportunity to award. Now we back that up into the prospect opportunity, just like you were saying with Raymond, right? He backs up in there. Very interesting, because the opportunity to award is probably the best you're going to do on the money you're going to make on a job when you sign that contract. If we can back up into, these stage 5 contractors and looking at the prospect opportunity, they're out there getting into the client's thoughts on how we can help them write a better contract, right? We're looking at it in even bigger ways, looking at the right opportunities to go after, not just that there's one there that we can bid on. We're looking at it more at a strategic level. That strategic level is, hey, what kind of scopes of work do we want to be working in? We've already looked at kind of the market sectors and the geography, but do we want to change some of that? Do we want to again add, delete, modify? What do we want to do with those large scopes of work? Looking at the organizational structure, this starts to really be thinking about the organizational development that happens. Do we have those aligned values and visions? Um, does the organizational structure support what we're trying to do here? Because we're probably going to move from, one or two geographies into another one. This now has to be not just ready to scale, but it's going to have to repeat across, which will, when you get to a 6+, that's what happens. So is the org structure ready for that? Do we have the people developed to do that? Are they ready to take that on? And you can see our talent value stream really starts to show up here, where it's not just who are we recruiting and how can we hire them, but what does onboarding look like? How do we get them into the culture of the organization? How do we explain to them the processes and the systems that we use? How do we get them into the lingo, right, that we're using? And it's interesting. I was talking to a group of people a couple of weeks ago, and David, I'm kind of the geek for the Clifton Strengths Assessment and
Right.
and how strengths work with people. Uh, it was funny talking to a contractor the other day who's kind of thinking about using more and more of this. They were having a hard time when they're onboarding people because the language they were using when they were onboarding people, yes, of course, it's very company specific, but they weren't using anything that they could all get their head around. And so in that case, we had gone to the Clifton Strengths, and now suddenly, as people are coming on board and they're being mentored through and they're being trained through, a lot of the conversations were going around, what some of the strengths were of other people, and what their own strengths were and how those all managed together. But onboarding somebody is a huge deal. How do you do that? What's the training? What does that all look like? And how can you talk the same to somebody? Because you're trying to get them to stay inside the organization, right? Because they're gonna have to move up, they're gonna have to move around. And really retention is a bigger deal too. And retention is the training of people, the professional development, which means depth at the role they're in, leadership development. What could their trajectory look like as they stay inside the organization? Recruit to hire is shouldn't say easy, right? But it is easier than trying to keep somebody that's, even been around a couple of weeks, couple of months, couple of years. But we all know what the cost of losing people is. It can be extremely expensive. But this is always a fun stage to watch because one of the clients I'm working with, you can almost see the light bulb come on when they're talking about those next few jobs, right? They're talking about that prospect to opportunity. They're talking about those next few jobs, and it's I just shouldn't say the light bulb, but the light bulb gets brighter and just brighter, right? Because they're talking about, yeah, and we're going to need to go back and hire, more people for this, and they're going to need to be in this area. They're going to have to work in these market sectors, or they're going to have to, and it's just fun to watch them mentally connect all of these dots or all of these puzzle pieces and really think about it in a system, right? Literally think about it in the system that it is. It's fun to watch.
In a system that's supported heavily by the people, so that this diagram looks heavily green. There was
Yeah.
it was very intentional that the talent value stream is green on the model, and stage 5, we also color code that as green because that stage 5 is where you really start to think, the two big things added in at stage 5 that I would look at is that you start to think about the talent value stream and go, wow, this is, we are not a machine that builds projects. we're now moving to a machine that builds the people that build the projects.
Yep.
We're now, we're moving to the machine that builds the people that build the systems that build the projects. And that's a big shift. That's a huge mindset shift. If you're still the same CEO moving from stage 3 to
Yeah.
4 to 5, that's a big set shift for yourself, and a capability shift. The other one is the critical supporting operations. And these are going to look different for every contractor. Every contractor, like you said, has an element, finance, there's technology, there's procurement, you've got to buy it. You could be, if you are a commercial general contractor, that doesn't self-perform, you don't have equipment as a supporting operations. You lease some
Right.
vehicles, or you pay vehicle allowances. However, if you're a civil contractor, even at stage 4, you're going to have pretty robust equipment operations. By the time you're at stage 5 or stage 6, that equipment's representing a third or more of your balance sheet, and you're going to have a really high level leader in charge of that. And so this is also an interesting leadership shift, is that at stage 5, you will start to have people in these critical supporting operations roles that are individually so much better at their specialization than what you are as a leader. And that's also an uncomfortable leadership shift. You may have, design might be part of it. So you might have a chief engineer that is better and more degreed than anything you are. You might know that your magic is how you pull it all together. You might have a service element to the business, and at this stage, that service element is integrated fully into the last part of the project execution, the project exit. It's introduced up front and maybe part of the sales process, but in the prospect opportunity and opportunity to award, it's fully integrated with the construction work. And it both generates opportunities for large construction projects, and it's fully integrated with the delivery of those large construction projects. Again, every business is different. So that's why it's important to take this model, recognize it's just a model, and make it work for your business. But those are some big shifts at this stage. And I think the other big shift is moving from planning to strategy. So I'm very much an operations person. I love you, Sue, because you have at least as many black shirts as I do. So we are not trying to just I guess we're slow and steady, but strategy is strategy is hard. There's the part that's exciting about strategy, and that's where we see a lot of people get stuck when they're at stages 4 and 5. And we're going to touch on this a little bit more later on, but strategic brainstorming is fun of all the possibilities. But no, strategy is actually about making some hard choices about specifically what we are going to do, and more specifically what we're not going to do. So saying yes to 3 things means saying no to 20 things.
Yeah.
Which is very different than the mindset you have to be at stage 1, 2, and 3. As an entrepreneur, when you're starting up, anything looks like a good job. Like if there's a customer and they're willing to pay you for it, and you think you might reasonably be able to do it, you're doing it.
Right.
And at stage 5, you start to have to think about saying no. And how do you say no? How do you say no effectively? That's literally why they call it the opportunity go, no go. So you're doing it in stage 4, you're thinking about it, but in stage 5, you're really codifying, and you're now, part of your role as the top leader is saying, what are we going to do? What aren't we going to go do? And that's scopes of work, market sectors, types of customers, geographies, things like that. Be hyper intentional about that, because you're allocating resources now over a 5 to 10 year time span. So let's go to stage 6 plus, and what changes?
So here, the interesting pieces that change is this is really about the cyclical nature of how it's done, right? Stage 5 was all about, okay, here we go. And David, like you said, right, it's saying yes to 3 and no to 20. It's planning for what that means. It's all of that. You get to stage 6, and now you're looking at strategy on a regular basis. You're looking at planning on a regular basis. All of those, it's like at the bottom of the slide, all of those are really wrapped around in, we call it operating rhythms. That those operating rhythms are, how do you do your strategic planning? How do you do your business planning? How do you do your job planning? How do you manage your talent value stream? You can see we've added the planning side of a talent value stream. We've added the offboarding side to close the circle on what that looks like, right? It's a cyclical thing. Um, the talent value stream is completed here because we look at um, the again, the planning is not just planning for the people, it's planning for the people that fit into the scopes of work we're going to have, the geography we're going to be working in, the organizational structure. If we've got, we're working with succession planning. So what does all of that look like? Do we have the right people available? Do we promote internally? But it is really building your people like you would plan building a job, running them through hiring, onboarding, retention, and then again, offboarding. What does that look like? Um, but to me, this one is all about the sustainability of the cyclical nature of each and every one of these cycles, and that it is about the system cycle. You're going to have people in there making those choices, but they are more deliberately run. They are more systematically scheduled. They are intended to collect feedback and have every iteration be even just 1% better. They're not just head down, straightforward. These are ways to look at it, to move it forward one iteration at a time. And whoever sits in that seat, whatever seat it is, they're starting with the same systems that the last person had. There's continuity, right? And it works for, all levels of the organization. But I saw it firsthand where there was a corporate strategy, right? There was planning for what we were going to do corporately. And then there were divisions below that, right? There was the heavy civil division, or the infrastructure division. There was a power division, those types of things. They had a strategy that fit in, under the umbrella of the corporate strategy. And they had planning, and what are our rhythms to do this? And how are we gathering up that feedback? And what is does our organizational structure and does our talent fit all that? And then inside the infrastructure division, there were, regional markets. They did the same thing. What does it look like inside here? So again, a cascading level of systems that it'd be like watching the internal guts of a clock, right? watching all those things move around. It's I don't know. I find it very interesting to think about it, stand back and kind of look at it and go, huh, it really is that. Most people we just don't think of it this way, right?
Right.
Because we're so busy in remembering that we got into it to build things. And we forget that this is really the level at which people need to be. And David, you talked about that CEO, right? At level 4 has to be a different CEO at level 5 or act differently. And that CEO may realize that they're not the CEO for stage 6. We have a client right now that's saying, you know what? I'm a great CEO at the level we're at, but he said, I don't see myself being the CEO at the next level. He goes, I think this might be it. And he goes, I'm fine with that. We just need to work through that. And it's that as well, right? Realizing who's best at which stages, and knowing it's okay to not make it from 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 and do something else, live into
I,
your retirement masterpiece, right?
including even that you don't even have to grow your contracting business like that, just
Right.
because our business is helping contractors navigate these different stages of growth. And part of that starts with helping refine, the leader, the owner's vision, the person who has the say on where the business is going. That's a big part of what we do, is help them
Yeah.
refine their vision. And like, one example I'm thinking about is someone who's had a desire, had a want for stage four, but quite frankly didn't have the aptitude for it.
Mhm.
So, and this is hard. This is a stressful thing. So when you want this, um, but you don't have the aptitude. Now, what they had an incredible level of grit, stamina, determination, whatever word you want, extreme ownership, whatever current publication of the best go do this book. They had all of those things. But
Right.
the problem is that if you don't have the, the aptitude to actually go do it, the raw materials, like, I could have all the desire in the world. I'm probably not going to dunk a basketball, 50 years old, I'm 5'10". Yeah, just probably not going to happen. You probably wouldn't want to bet on that. And quite honestly, me being, if I was hyper determined to go do that, and I worked really really hard at it, aside from setting myself up for disappointment, I'm probably doing a lot of damage to my body.
Yeah.
A whole lot of damage to my body by doing that. So that's kind of the analogy that I go back. And through a lot of really hard conversations, we got back to, no, you were at your happy spot running a stage three, contractor. You were at your happy spot. You were happy. You were making plenty of money. Customers were delighted. Your team was
Yep.
making plenty of money. All that was good. Let's call this what it is for now, you know,
Yep.
and and so, just because we just talk through, I just want to make, sure that we're not saying, you have to go grow. Growth is a decision. It is a choice.
Right.
If you do make that choice, this is what it looks like. And this is how that model evolves over time from stage one through stage six plus. And this is kind of what it looks like.
Well,
So,
yeah, when we were talking the other day, right, where you see the circles up in the upper right hand corner, it sometimes can feel, but looks maybe a bit like a tornado, right? At the bottom,
yeah.
a stage one, stage two, right? It's a little bit tighter circle, tighter circle, tighter circle, and as you get bigger and bigger and bigger, there's just bigger circles going around. So yeah, it is all um, systematic. We just need to think of it that way, right? Just realize it's all a system.
And you have to know what you love doing.
Yes.
I think, it's really important. Like, I really love building projects. I love, I still, I'm an electrician, right? I enjoyed changing light bulbs this morning. I got into the office and there was a light bulb that was out. I was like super excited. That's electrician light, by the way. But anyways, you have to decide what excites you, what motivates
Yeah.
you, and also what your aptitudes are, and where you're at. You can't take stage five systems and bolt them onto a stage three contractor.
Right.
The systems would crush the operations. It wouldn't be worth it. It would stifle it. And that's something that has been well described. They call it bureaucracy. Lots of people look at bureaucracy and it's kind of like a misunderstood word. They look at it's like communication. Bureaucracy in and of itself is just a word. You have to qualify it. There's enabling bureaucracy, which is the scaffolding around an organization that allows it to scale and grow. And then there's stifling bureaucracy, where you have, and it can even be within one functional area of the organization or the organization as a whole, where that scaffolding begins to stifle the
Yeah.
actual core of the business, which is, we need a customer, we have to serve that customer, we have to go build a really good project. And if those things are not kept in balance, you can move really quickly from enabling levels of bureaucracy and support infrastructure to coercive and stifling. And that's the beginning of the end. We're not going to
Yep.
talk about that at all. That's some doom and gloom stuff for the future. But